Hello, and welcome back to Automate Live. I'm Jana Martin, Media Production Manager at A3, the host of Automate, and I'm very excited to be joined at the desk right now by Bob Kuniega, the President and CEO of Lanco Integrated. Bob, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And for those who maybe haven't been by your booth yet and don't know, tell us a little bit about Lanco and what you guys do.
Sure. We have successfully navigated technology changes, business climates for over 40 years. Over those 40 years, we've deployed more than 8,000 systems to over 30 countries throughout the globe. We've got a bit of unique business structure. We are an employee-owned company. We became an employee-owned company in 2009. And I think the reason I bring that up is we have passionate people who have stake in the business,
right,
and they display that passion to our customers. And so that tends to, I think, form partnerships that we have longstanding relationships with our customers. We're not just suppliers because
right,
that person's individual efforts turns into success for the company, but also for them personally as owners in the business.
right.
We gravitate towards precision applications where we do the engineering, and then we develop lines for assembly and test, automated manufacturing lines. The markets right now that are more prevalent for us are medical devices or med tech space, a lot in precision automotive.
Yeah.
We're doing quite a bit in defense, and then industrial and consumer electronics. We are a global company. Our headquarters are just outside of Portland, Maine, but we also have a freestanding operation in Malaysia to service the customers in that part of the world. So we like to partner with global Fortune 500 companies, but then we have the footprint locally to serve them as partners wherever they may grow and be.
Incredible. So what does Lanco project or foresee for market trends and investments in automation projects this year?
So some of the trends, I'm sure you've heard it this week. I've certainly heard it here, has been the tariffs.
I mean, they change almost daily, right?
Yeah. I'd say it's put a wrinkle in it for our business and
right,
for our customers.
Right.
We've seen price increases from our vendors. We've had interesting conversations with our customers. But I think the takeaway is number one, we're not seeing customers shying away from automation.
Good.
And if you reflect on not only the tariffs currently, but 5 years ago with the pandemic,
right,
it really has reinforced the need for automation.
Absolutely.
And I think as we get through this, it's only going to perpetuate. Prior to this, companies were doing low cost country manufacturing,
exactly,
and then shipping it around the world. But these two events, the tariffs and pandemic, has really reinforced the need for building your products where you have to serve your customers.
Exactly.
And
automation really provides that opportunity that wasn't there 20, 30 years ago.
And there's new challenges that automation conquers for them.
Yeah.
The complexity of products is getting more and more complex. You can't hand assemble things any longer. Certainly there is the talent wars going on,
right,
and automation can surpass that.
Exactly. So what are the unusual challenges that you encounter, and what are some strategies that you employ to overcome these challenges for your customers?
I think I mentioned it before. There's an increasing demand for higher quality and zero defects.
Right.
So the markets that we're in, starting with automotive, there's thousands of sensors and switches going on cars now. And that's doing everything collision avoidance, engine management. And those are challenges that need higher quality, zero defect products.
Right.
If you go to our med tech stuff, it's talking about people's lives.
Exactly.
Right. And so whether it's in the doctor's office or in the operating suite, they want to make sure those products are perfect.
Exactly.
And there's regulations from the FDA.
Exactly.
Defense, again, making sure that the munitions, the communications are keeping the fighting warriors safe, but also delivering on the mission that they have. So this need for higher quality and zero defects is paramount. Everything is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And so automation is really the only way. In many cases, you can't assemble the products and then keep the quality.
Right.
The other thing that we're seeing is technology is changing so rapidly. So for our customers to come up with a concept, build a prototype, get it to the market, they have to have an automated solution that so they can capitalize on the business opportunity.
Right. Right. Okay, so let's go on to talk about precision engineering. It's so critical, especially in these industries. You kind of mentioned that already, but designing your systems. Okay, let's talk about that. What is your approach to designing these systems that meet such complex environments for such, different, like you already mentioned, different sectors, healthcare, defense? How do you guys kind of speak to each one of those niche groups?
Okay. I think for there's a lot of systems integrators here.
Yeah.
We kind of gravitate towards low volume, high mix type applications that require precision. So that's kind of our sweet spot of where we play. And what that entails for us, typically, we love to get into a conversation early on with the customer when they're still in the prototype phase, even before they put the requirements document on. Because what we're able to do is bring our manufacturing expertise to the conversation.
Right.
And what I mean by that is we're helping them design parts tolerances that will work in our machines. Yeah. We may be talking to them about material choices.
Right.
We have to understand their production needs and build the equipment to satisfy that. So where we are most successful and why we have such longstanding customers is we act as collaborative partners. We bring the automation to the discussion. They bring the product and the process that we developed on our machines for them.
Right.
Our design is such that it's modularized, almost like Lego blocks.
Yeah.
And so many cases, they have one variant that's coming out. They want to repurpose that machine over a longer span. And in some cases, their volumes aren't such so that some of the assembly applications can be done more manually, but over time, they have more demand, and we can come in later and automate the machine to accomplish higher throughputs or increase quality. So that allows them to use that asset over a longer period of time.
Which I'm sure they're very happy about.
Yes. There are applications where even sometimes we're not quite sure if the design is producible in an automated fashion. So we'll do a proof of concept.
Okay.
We'll take that particular part of the machine and build it almost in a laboratory environment.
Oh, cool.
To test that our automation will work, but also validate that their parts choices are appropriate for an automated assembly application.
I mean, you got me thinking. I've been talking to many folks here today, and they've said, actually, I'm not automating yet. I don't know where to start. What would you say to that person?
Well, let Lanco come in and let our engineers talk to you.
Right.
In fact, we have a customer working with now, a potential new customer, and they're in that same quandary. Yeah. And what we're finding is, even just a few years ago, manufacturers would have automation engineers on staff, but they tend to have a very narrow view of their business, their applications, whereas we can bring a more broader view.
Right.
Based on 40 years of applications, 8,000 installations. So
exactly.
That's where the partnership comes.
Yeah.
And we tend to focus on the applications that we've had experience and success in. So we can share that from customer to customer and adapt to their unique needs for their business.
Exactly. Now, how do you balance the need for these really highly customized solutions with the operational risks that customization can cause? That's tricky.
Yeah. As much as our engineers sometimes like to reinvent everything, we have to balance that. And you really should, in our view, only customize things where there's real value. Intel has this philosophy with their chips. You may or may not know this, where when they release a new chip, it's almost a mandate. They can't put more than 40% of new designs into that chip, and that mitigates the risk to some point. There's certain things that need to be customized, like the grippers on the end of the robot to pick up the part.
Right.
Sometimes are bowl feeding. But in many cases, our software, our hardware platforms, we plug in a module that has been proven, and we just customize those things that are unique to that application.
Right.
We do a pretty thorough risk assessment up front so that we understand where there may be challenges. That also leads us to these proof of concept areas so we're not surprised, the customer's not surprised, because typically there's a tight window from the time they agree to go with us, and they have a window to get this machine up and running to deliver.
They want to get it rolling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we like to validate early and often and freeze designs as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a challenge with our customers because in many cases, they're still designing their product as we're designing the machine.
Interesting.
But
that's how fast we're going here.
Exactly. So they're putting the wings on the airplane as it's up in the air, and we hope we can get it down to the ground at the right time. In terms of mitigating risk, because it's not just the risk when you get the machine onto the factory floor and they start their first production run. They want to mitigate the risk throughout the life of that machine. So
Absolutely.
We do have a business unit. We call it S3.
Okay.
It's sales, it's support, services, and our spares. So when we're in the early stages, we're recommending the customer a list of spares they should have so that if something does fail on the machine, they don't have to wait 6 weeks or sometimes 6 months for a replacement. So they have those there to keep the machine up and running.
Because you have a good sense of maybe what those might be.
Exactly.
Because of all that experience that we were talking about.
That experience, and we also know the lead times from our vendors as well.
Which is very helpful.
We also encourage service contracts. And that serves our purpose for us because we get to see how our machines are surviving in real use. Our service teams go in there, can observe and feedback to the company how their operators are actually using the machine. We can look at wear points in the machine and give them an opportunity to have a controlled shutdown to fix things before there's a catastrophic
awesome.
failure.
Okay.
The other thing that we find out is maybe some manual stations, we can recommend how we can change it because technology is always changing.
Right. The person at that company may not know what the new opportunities are.
Exactly.
And even if you come to a show like this, you walk around and it's almost overwhelming. There's almost too many options. And so you really need to talk to an integrator, Lanco specifically, about what to do.
Exactly.
So looking ahead, what do you see the biggest opportunities for embedding even smarter risk management into precision automation?
You're seeing it more and more, real-time monitoring.
Yeah.
In fact, we're showing it in our machine, one of our machines in our booth called LSM, Lanco Smart Manufacturing. Really what it's doing is to the machine level, to the module level, to the pallet that moves around with the part, we're able to look at machine uptime, the quality, production rates. That's giving the customer trending analysis to predict if something could be failing in the future, as opposed to waiting till alarm goes off, machine shuts down, their production is shut down.
And now you have major problems.
Right. In the design stage, our vendors, we do some of it as well, some digital twins.
Yeah.
So we're doing path planning on a screen before we cut hard tool and actually move things around. It's
much easier to move pixels
exactly
around.
and much safer.
Yeah.
A robot arm hitting you is
and much more affordable.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with our mechanical design tools to make sure before we start cutting metal that we don't have interferences.
Right.
So we see more and more of that. I think moving forward, you'll see some adaptive automation.
Yeah.
That's really taking account tolerance differences in the parts, maybe environmental changes in the machines, adapting as there's some mechanical wear that's happening. One of the areas that really is, I think, in the forefront right now is cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Industry 4.0 is great,
Sure.
But it brings opportunities and challenges.
Absolutely.
So you have the opportunity to look at a lot of pieces of data, make some predictive analysis of what's happening, interface the OT on the floor with the IT and the production schedules.
Right.
But you have to protect against unintended consequences. Maybe you send something down to the machine and reset something inadvertently. Worst off, you've got cybersecurity hacks.
Sure.
So it's great for production people to say, I can be traveling remotely, dial into my machine, but the fairness partners could do that as well.
Anyone else could too, right? So you have to plan for that added security.
Exactly. So, there's some industries that this is more sensitive to.
Sure.
For instance, our defense partners. There are regulations or committees that are having standardized some things. So, in defense, for instance, there's ITAR compliance or CMMC compliance. There's NIST compliance. And so those are good things, but they add challenges. But we're prepared to handle those challenges and help our customers through that.
Yeah, so if you're experiencing any of those challenges, if you just don't know where to start, highly recommend talking to an integrator, especially Lanco Integrated. You can come and see them on the show floor here at Automate if you're around, or check them out online, send an email, get in touch with them, and they can help you get started automating. Bob, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more today.
Well, thank you, Jana. I appreciate the opportunity. We're looking for a successful rebound in spite of the pandemic.
Exactly.
And please come by and see us on booth 1309. We'd love to talk to you about your automation needs.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Automate Live with Lanco Integrated. We'll be right back after a short break.